Hello, everyone. Here is a Tassin podcast, and I am Nyein Chan May, host of a Tassin podcast. Today is the special episode of a Tassin show. We have a special guest from Germany, Majid Lenz, who is a Myanmar officer from the Stiftung Asienhaus in Germany, in Cologne, Germany. And why do we have a special episode today? Because we will have, so very soon we will have a 3-year anniversary of the attempted coup in Myanmar. And I would like to talk and exchange our opinions with my colleague and what we think about that and also what is happening in Myanmar. And in the meantime, Majid is also an experienced person in the field of advocacy for Myanmar. So I also would like to hear from him what did he experience in the last 3 years and so on. So welcome, Majid. Thank you very much for your time.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
Could you please let's start the conversation with what is the Stiftung Asienhaus for our audience? What does the Stiftung Asienhaus do? And what I already introduced you, but would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Majid Lenz. I'm the Myanmar desk officer at Stiftung Asienhaus, which is a relatively small foundation based in Germany. And we're focused mostly on doing civil society dialogue and doing public information work and lobby and advocacy work on behalf of the demands and the needs of the people of mostly Southeast Asia.
Thank you very much, Majid. Today, so for our audience, I would like to, also for transparency reasons, we recorded this episode on 26th of January, which is a coincidence, which is also not, because I chose this date, 26th January. It was 4 years ago, 26th January 2020. It was 2 months after the elections in 2020. General Ma Nyein Chan May, the spokesperson of the military junta in Myanmar, he did a press conference on this day 4 years ago and telling the public, he was telling the public, the army cannot guarantee that we will not stage a coup. So it was, I mean, as I saw this post 4 years ago, I experienced that only via Facebook. But in the meantime, I also remembered the time where young people in Myanmar, they show their satire on Facebook. For example, they are saying, hey, so in Burmese language, we are saying coup, it means seize the power. So it means like keeping the power. So the young people in Myanmar were using sarcasm, like, for example, if you want to keep, just just do housekeeping, something like that. Yeah, those were the days. So, and Majid, I just would like to start with some of the numbers, and maybe you can also add today. So the up-to-date numbers are we have days of airstrikes 748 days, and revolutionary forces, they captured and controlled 35 townships. And according to AAPP, Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, we have 25,000 people who were arrested by the military junta, and more than 4,400 people were killed. Again, those are the numbers, those are the figures which those organizations could collect. And there will be unknown numbers. So just for the audience. Yeah, so let's talk about the 1st of February 2021. Yeah, I just would like to ask you, Majid, because yeah, how did you hear about the coup in Myanmar? I'm not asking you how did you feel about it, but I'm asking you how did you hear about the coup in Myanmar on 1st of February 2021?
Yeah, I was in the office that day, and I wasn't at that time in my current role. I was filling another role at the foundation, and the Myanmar desk officer at the time just realized that something had happened as well, right? And then the news started to come in via social media and so on. You could just see that, yeah, something was going on. You probably remember that clip that was shown in the news even that evening, of the tanks rolling in that viral clip.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, on the day itself, it actually got a bit of news play in Germany. And yeah, it depends, right? If you didn't know anything about Myanmar before, that was probably one of the first times you'd heard of the country. If you knew a bit more, it was like a drastic realignment of what everyone was doing and thinking at the time, because everyone had been more or less focused on the ongoing liberation and the positive signs.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was quite a blow, and I think it was received and portrayed as that in most of the media which covered it.
Yeah. I also remember that day. It was 11 p.m. In Germany. So in Myanmar, it's like 4 a.m. At the morning. And some of my friends, they were elected during 2020 elections, and we were really excited about the first meeting, the first parliamentary plenary session. And then later they they told me, yeah, there will be something. I mean, something's wrong. Some of my friends in Naypyidaw told me that on that day, on 31st, 30 January, and also, but for me, in the meantime, when I think about it in retrospective, I never I've never doubted that, or let's say, I I never said that. Oh, the military, they do not dare to seize the power of the country, because I know that, and I mean, I also lived in the time of military dictatorship, so I have experienced what they can be capable of. So yeah, and then so it was literally a nightmare for me. Even though I do really I knew that, and also it was like it is not an unexpected thing for me. It is not a surprising fact about for me. It was just okay, they did it, and in the meantime, shit, we will be, I'm sorry for my language, we will be in this fresh hell. So it was how I experienced the coup on 1st February. So let's talk about your work and which developments do you see. So because you are also now for 3 years in this role, right? And so which developments do you see during these 3 years based on your experience?
Yeah, as I said, you could quite early see that there was a big realignment in the in the international scene, right? From the people who had been working on, how can we further open up Myanmar? How can we support this burgeoning democracy? Suddenly it all shifted back to topics we had hoped we could have left behind. And then the country itself, of course, you could see that relatively quickly these mass demonstrations formed, right? Where it was like a new wave of people, even just politicizing in this moment and getting more active about their own future. You could see like some of the old fault lines, they were closing up and people were out on the street and actually actively protesting. And very bravely facing up to security forces, which are becoming more and more violent against them, right? And then there were some inflection points, right, where you had the first assaults on protesters, you had the first death among them, and then the vigils that were assaulted. And you could see even then that this the way that people reacted even back then let you kind of know that this would most likely not blow over.
Yeah.
Because even the repression that was faced then, usually these, if you don't fold in this moment, then it's going to become protracted, right? And you could see that a lot of these people who had come out, who understand themselves as like young and progressive, as LGBTQ plus, as feminist, as very inclusive.
Yeah.
You could just see that they were not willing to give up their future and the future of their countrymen without a fight. And this is another thing you can see during these 3 years, that these resistance movements have solidified themselves and have become part of a larger struggle against the military.
Yeah. This was also because you mentioned the point of mass protests and so on. And the thing is like nowadays, I mean, we are now in the third year of the conflict. And so the fights, the armed resistance has expanded, I mean, over the time. So the thing is, when we talk about Myanmar and when we talk about the resistance movement, when we talk about the struggle for democracy, the people, I mean, we are in Germany, so let's talk about people in Germany and people in the European Union. They very fastly, very quickly, they jumped into the conclusion, talking about the armed resistance. What is your take on that?
Sorry, what conclusion did they jump to?
I mean, the conclusion, like, yeah, okay, now again, there are Myanmar again with all of the armed conflicts, Myanmar
Okay,
armed
yeah,
conflicts.
it's degrading back into this civil war that we've seen several times before.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it could just be the eternal optimist in me talking, but like, it genuinely seems different this time, right? It's the groupings of people are much different. The inclusiveness is much different. The cohesiveness is much different. There's not just people who had problems with the military for years or decades struggling against this takeover, but there's movement from the center of society, from like students, from young activists, from doctors, from lawyers, from journalists, who could just see that the way that they had hoped to live their lives and the way that they'd become accustomed to live their lives would no longer be possible under this way. And that they and their friends and their families and their communities would suffer. And so it is true that Myanmar is once again engulfed in a broader conflict, but I think that the composition of this conflict and the way that it is being waged and the end goals that are postulated are quite a bit different.
Yeah, and also when I talk about Myanmar and what is happening in Myanmar during public events and also during advocacy dialogues, it is also for me very important to inform the important decision makers in the European Union and also in Germany to see Myanmar not only as to see the democracy struggle of Myanmar not only as an armed resistance, but also it's very important to highlight that there is still non-violent part of this struggle. We still have our hundreds of thousands of CDM people, so CDM civil disobedience movement, and the civil servants who joined the CDM movement. They are still determined to fight against this military dictatorship, to fight against this injustice. So they are still existing. I mean, the world just forgets very, very quickly about them, and that's why I see myself in like as in duty to talk about those CDM people. And in the meantime, other nonviolent political struggle. For example, we still have the nonviolent protest in metropolitan region of Myanmar, which is also whose courage is unbelievable. So what I'm talking about is there are still young people who are organizing themselves under the very, very strict surveillance of the military junta, and they knew that their lives are threatened if they were arrested by the military junta, by the junta soldiers. But in the meantime, they were very brave to go on the streets, and then they dare to deliver a speech to the people, to Myanmar people who are just on market or on streets. But in the meantime, the interesting thing is the reaction of the people. I still remember the time where my father and uncles, they were also political activists. At the time, the people just like, okay, those guys are talking about politics. Let's move. Let's just. We don't want to talk with them. No? They will bring us danger, so on. But now in 2023, 2024, the people they didn't go away. They didn't left the place where the small protests were. And they joined the protest, for example, in a way of showing three-finger salute, three-finger symbol, and so on. So the resilience and the courage and also participation of people are still there. And I think the international community should see that also. And yeah, let's talk about the international community and response of international community, since we are in the European Union and also in Germany. So the perception of my friends and also the people in Myanmar, it's like the international community takes so long to take an action for Myanmar, or let's say sometimes they have this perception like international community is not helping us. We felt very ignored. We felt unheard. So yeah, Majid, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, we are trying to make them heard, right? But at the same time, the international community, especially in Europe, is caught up in quite a lot of other problems, and it's always a struggle to get them to listen, right?
Yeah.
And there are, of course, people who are interested and who are working on it, and also at a governmental level.
Mm-hmm.
But translating that into nation state action, into international organization action, is always a bit difficult. And as you said, it's of course also important to make them see the activists, the flash mob protests, and the brave individuals as well. But I mean, that just gets even harder, right? Even if you get the chance to speak to someone, usually they're more interested in a broad-based pitch about how's the situation going, what is currently going on, what is your expectation for the future, how's the war going, basically.
Yeah,
and it's much harder to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's talking about like so much like meta level, right? So it is not talking about, people are now trying to look Myanmar like as big picture, not the details of it, right?
Yeah, and in some ways it's understandable, right? Because they need to make the big picture decisions as well. But at the same time, that leads to losing so much nuance and losing so much of the information. As you said, those flash mob protests, those individuals still work in different ways, which are not having the impacts which make it to the news here, right? Because the news here, it's mostly about the big military stuff, or if the military, the big fighting that occurs from time to time, or when the military blows up, let's say 100 people at a time or something. But that should make it even more important to inform people about these other contributions, right? Which are no less meaningful, but which on the face of them seem to inform policy much less.
Yeah. I mean, in the meantime, for example, we are also having difficulty here in Germany to get a news article about Myanmar, for example. I mean, it is not about that there are not articles, but it is about the interest of the general public. No? I mean, Myanmar is situated very far away from Germany, and then also Myanmar has not so strong relationship. I mean, diplomatic and also like economic relationship with Germany. Yeah, I mean, what do you think? How can we persuade, and how can we make Myanmar? I don't know, how can we bring Myanmar nearer to the public in Germany, and and also to the decision makers in Germany?
Yeah, I think it's just what we talked about before, right? Because if people hear those stories, if people are actually starting to engage with the issues, it is a very compelling case. It is a very, very personal and emotional and direct appeal. Everyone can understand what's going on when you talk to them, right? The question is, how can we get to a point where this is acknowledged? Systematically sounds kind of stupid, but you know what I mean, right? Where it's not just you're currently talking to someone and that person is currently empathizing, but that doesn't change the way that the rest of the gears move. And the question is, how can we get those gears moving? And I mean, in some ways they have a bit, right? Because there was some attention internationally from time to time. But right now we're back to the people mostly being caught up in issues that seem nearer or are geographically nearer than Myanmar.
Yeah. Um, Thank you very much for that, Majid. I mean, yeah. Um, so then let's talk about some of our recommendations to the decision makers in the European Union and also in Germany. What do you recommend? Sorry, what do you recommend if you meet and also you talk about you're also doing advocacy work for Myanmar? So yeah, could you please share with us a little bit what you recommend?
Oh, I feel bad. I've already been going on for so long, so I'll just do a few and then you can take the rest, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Um, yeah, first, of course, what we've been talking about, right? Uh, it's our aim to engage these people, but then they shouldn't engage with me, but they should engage with the actual people on the ground making the demands would be my primary demand. Like,
Mm-hmm.
listen to what the people of Myanmar say and want and need and what they're telling you.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's not something you can really tell a decision maker because they need like clear action points. Of
Yeah.
course, they're also interested in talking to people, but then those people also need to have clear action points. Um, and there's several ways to support the people in their struggle for democracy without going to the more controversial of like actually providing aid to the resistance by helping CDM, by
Mm-hmm.
engaging closer with the non-violent factions of the resistance,
Mm-hmm.
by helping refugees, by helping to not only directly helping the refugees, but by also helping the countries they fled to change their ways of engaging with these new people. And yeah, just try and provide them with a basis that is sufficient so that we won't just have another lost generation, right? All the people who've been out of school for years, first through COVID and now through the coup, just give them the chance to make something of their lives and support them in that.
Yeah. I mean, those are very important points you mentioned, and we are also advocating for these points. And in the meantime, you talk about helping refugees, so humanitarian aid, and it is also important that not only to see Myanmar. Okay, there are millions of internally displaced people, but we also should see that this is leading to a problem also for our neighboring countries, and this strategic kind of point makings, I think we need to improve. We need to improve, and yeah, we talk about the humanitarian assistance many times in our advocacy meetings and so on, and we also focus to talk about rechanneling the humanitarian assistance. It means there are organizations and also the groups, self-help groups who are operating on the ground in the middle of battlefields, and they know. We say in German, how we say, they know how the rabbit runs. I don't know how we say it in English. So they know how the business is. Sorry, business is not the right word. So they know how things work on the ground. So get in touch with those people, and we as advocacy persons, we can provide contacts, and also we can also brainstorm together to find options to help them out. But in the meantime, unfortunately, the European Union and also in Germany, they have very strict rules of receiving fundings and so on. So that's why we are demanding, for example, to lower the bureaucratic burdens for humanitarian, to rechannel the humanitarian assistance. And another thing is to also the bureaucratic burdens, but now this time is about human rights defenders who had to flee the country, and they are important voices of Myanmar from Myanmar, and they need protection. And those people are, yeah, some of them are now in at the border area, but in the meantime still living in fear. So yeah, so these will be two examples from me. Did I forget something? Did I forget anything? Do you want to add?
No, I think that's fine insofar as the main topics go.
Yeah, and also I would also say because you talk about engaging with people. I mean, talk about listen to people. This is also what I mean, Germany's feminist foreign policy, let's say, since 2022. Um, it is also stated that to make civil society stronger, the civil societies which are crucial, which play crucial role for justice, social justice, and democracy, and so on. So this is also, I think, for Germany, it is also important to listen to the civil societies in Myanmar from on the ground and also intersectionally. This could be my point of view. Yeah, and Majid, and I just would like to ask you about. I mean, you were also at the border area. I heard about that, and did you meet people, and how was it?
Yeah, visiting the border area was very enlightening. I did not cross into Myanmar, just to make that clear. But
Yeah.
like just meeting the people there and seeing how they adapt to their new circumstances was deeply moving, right? Because you've got all these people who've only made it out themselves, and now they're trying to build these networks and support systems and ways to support each other to get more people to have an acceptable place to stay. Well, of course, still working for a return to democracy in their country in whichever way they can, as artists, as journalists, as photographers, as however they can. And it was also very interesting to meet them on a non-political level, so to speak, because usually you exchange about the politically relevant facts, right?
Yes.
How many refugee camps are there? How are you for food? Do you have legal residency papers? But just being able to talk to these people about how's your daily life now? Like, you used to make music. Can you still do that? Can you still play the sports you used to play? How do you manage to live here? And how do you reconcile all that with your desire to still be there for your friends and family who are still in the country at sometimes? It was it was incredibly impressive.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that. Because when we talk about Myanmar and when we talk about activists in exile and also, the people who had to flee the country, you already mentioned they made it, but after that, what is their future and how do they survive there. And yeah, so this is also another challenge. Being in Myanmar and fighting against the military junta, and also outside of Myanmar, but near Myanmar, at the border area, living in fear. So this is also one of the situations we should not forget about. We should not forget about when we talk about Myanmar and the actions which we can recommend. And also, yeah. Yeah, Majid. And I also had heard that you are trying to, or you are planning to launch a podcast. Could you please talk about it?
Oh, I get to do a bit of self-promotion. That's great. Yeah, I'm also planning to do a podcast on Burma Podcast Network. I've very kindly been offered a spot to get some of these issues out there. And the idea was to have an English-speaking podcast on there so that they can also reach a more international audience. And the idea was to have thematic episodes where we deal with specific topics, and also to have interview episodes where I try to connect with some of these people I talked about before, right? These artists, these journalists in exile, and of course we'll do everything to protect to make sure they're secure and they're able to not endanger themselves by speaking to me, but just trying to give people an insight into what life is like for them. How are they doing in their new situation? And I think that circles back in an interesting fashion to what we said at the beginning, right? Get people to listen to the individuals, get people to listen to the people on the ground and engage directly with them. And I think that's often missed, right? Just having these personal, smaller scale stories instead of having the big headline numbers.
You talk about it. You mentioned the point, listen to people. So I would say your podcast, I mean, through your podcast, we will be able to listen the people. I mean, the international audience will be able to listen the people whose voices are still unheard. I do not say that I hate the word. I don't know. I don't know about you, but in the meantime, I hate the word voiceless. I mean, we are not voiceless. Nobody is voiceless. Everybody has a voice. We just need to listen to it. And sometimes we have to make it louder because some people just need to hear it more than once. So yeah, so many strategies to make voices heard, but we can get it there. So thank you very much, Majid, for your time. And we are really looking forward to listening to your podcast and experience the stories of your guest.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It was great talking to you. And I hope that everyone could take something away from our anniversary episode.
Yeah, I hope that too. And next episode will be in Burmese language. But in the meantime, I will also be recording some episodes in English, of course, sometimes about Myanmar and of course what is happening in Myanmar. And in the meantime, next episodes we will be talking about feminism in Myanmar and how women and marginalized groups in Myanmar are resisting not only this oppression by the military junta, but also the patriarchy in the society of Myanmar. So yeah, stay tuned. And if you like this episode, if you enjoyed this episode, You can support us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Everywhere where you can listen podcasts, we have our channel, Burma Podcast Network, and my show is Atasin. And you can like and share and subscribe, and you can also recommend people. Yeah, thank you very much for all your support.
Thank you.